as of Tuesday, there's a change in schedule. Do you know what time they're doing slichot Tuesday? Good morning. Good morning. Are they doing quarter to, or they're doing they're doing 45 minutes? You're saying
45 minutes before Shahari.
So do you think we could have a 6:15 hour class? Do you think? What do you think? So it's on a little bit on the early end. We'll try our best, right? That's all we could do. In life, the only thing we could do is what?
Right.
Try give it our best shot, right? Yes.
I'm leaving September 2nd.
To the Holy Land.
Go to the Holy Land. I'm leaving to visit my niece in Colombia. And I'm coming back for a week. I'm going to Israel till after the holiday.
Well, okay, but until September, so we have a good week of you until September 2nd, a week and a day or so. Okay, so maybe you'll help us get off the ground our slichot schedule and our learning, together with our good friend Ralph and Asaf. Okay.
So what time did you say it's going to be? What?
It looks like we're gonna have our class at 6:15, starting on Tuesday morning. Okay. The last thing we were talking about, we were discussing the skins of a non-kosher animal. And the question was, are those skins of a non-kosher animal, if they would be serving as a canopy over a dead body, over a corpse, would it be subject to the laws of Tumat Ohel, that the canopy over the dead body also has to have the process of, the ashes of the paraduma. So that was our discussion, and Rava wanted to say that we have a precedent by sarat, by leprosy, that we find that leprosy applies to all types of leather, from kosher leather, not kosher leather. So too, the leather of the ohel, of the tent, should also apply to kosher leather or not kosher leather as well. And the Gemara said you can't compare tumat meit, the contamination of a dead body, that comes through a dead body, to negaim, to leprosy, because we find there's extra stringency by leprosy. The Gemara says, because even the threads that were not woven, just being in a state of threads, let's say the threads that go down and the threads that go across, the sheti of the erev, the warp and the woof threads, if they have a discoloring, they become contaminated, which doesn't apply to by the mate, by a dead body. If it's threads that are not woven, they will not be subject to contamination. So we see there's a stringency by leprosy over contamination of a dead body, and therefore you can't compare the two. So then the Gemara said, listen, let's learn out from Shvatzim, let's learn out from the Sheretz, the teeming animals, that we say by the Sheretz. Let's say we mentioned the lizard, the mouse, the other types of the weasel, other types of animals that are mentioned, that if they're dead, then they come in contact with leather. The leather becomes contaminated, and that leather is, whether the leather is from a kosher animal or not kosher animal. So too, the Gemara says that should apply by that law. We should say the same way. There's no difference between kosher leather and not kosher leather by sheretz. So too, by these teeming animals should be the same thing by the tent of a dead body. And the Gemara says you can't compare the two because there is a stringency by sheretz. There's a stringency by these teeming animals that don't apply to by the case of the dead body, by the ohel, a mate, because by a sheretz we said it's even the size of an adasha, of a lentil, would contaminate. If there's a dead piece of a dead mouse or dead weasel or a dead lizard, if that's the way we're translating some of the shmatzim, if they would be a size of a lentil, which is very small, it would contaminate, in contrast to a piece of a dead body. It has to have a size of a kazayit, an olive size, which is much larger to contaminate. So therefore, we see there's more stringency by the story, the contamination of there is a stringency more by the contamination of a teeming animal, and therefore you can't use that as a source to extrapolate to say but a case of the mate, the dead body would have the same situation. So therefore, now the Gemara says, okay, we find that then the Gemara shoots back, but the Goim Yochichu. We're now at 28.4 on the bottom, first column. So Rava continues, and see Rava is building his case. This whole piece of Gemara is Rava is going to have three stages, three rungs of the ladder, so to speak, to learn out the halacha. See, step one, he brought in tumat mate. From the step one, he brought in Aksari, he brought in the source we'll learn from leprosy. Step two, he says, okay, you're going to question leprosy. I'll bring in sherets, the teeming animals. Step three is the following. That we could go ahead and learn. Meaning, Rava says, you know what? Step one was you want to learn it from this one, you can't learn it from that one. If you're going to learn it from the other one, you can't learn it from the other one. But now let's learn it from a combination. We can learn the case of contamination of a dead body from a combo, from using both the teeming animal, the sheret, and leprosy, and we can learn it from there. Why? Because you're telling me I can't learn out from sherets. I can't learn out from the teeming animal because that has a stringency that the contamination of a dead body doesn't have. What was the stringency that it has? That it contaminates the size of an adasha, the size of a lentil. But nigoyim yochichu, look at nega. Leprosy does not contaminate the size of a lentil. You need more than that. You need the size of a bean, a bigger bean, which is larger than a lentil. It has enough. The bean has space for 9 lentils. That's the size of the bean. It's 9 times larger. And even though it's 9 times larger, it means it's not as strict as the teeming animals, yet there's no difference between kosher leather and not kosher leather. So you can't tell me it's because of this stringency that's why it has the halacha, or this stringency that's why it has halacha, because we see this stringency doesn't make the law. Because if you tell me it's a stringency because it has even the size of a lentil, I'll show you leprosy, which is not the size of a lentil, and yet it also contaminates. There's no difference in kosher leather, not kosher leather. And if you can tell me leprosy is different because the warp and the woof threads contaminate, I'll show you something else that the warp and woof threads don't contaminate, like the story of the sherets, and yet there's no difference in kosher leather, not kosher leather. So it's not about that stringency. It's not causing the law. And this stringency is not causing the law because the law of kosher leather, not kosher leather, being the same law of contamination, it doesn't make a difference whether it has this stringency or that stringency. So therefore it's not that this stringency is making it, because if it's this stringency that's making it, so this law of no difference between kosher and not kosher leather should be limited to that case that has that stringency. But if I find another situation that doesn't have that stringency and also subject to the law, so there's something else that's going on. What is going on? The Chaza Hadin, Lo Rizeh Rizeh. Each one has a stringency that the other one doesn't have. But what is the common denominator? Ella hatzara shovash behem she'ot tamei behen. But the common denominator, look who's here. Aaron is here. We are saying beautiful that Aaron is here. Aaron, it's great to see you. So what is the common denominator? That the common denominator is we're discussing Aaron skin, leather from a non-kosher animal. Would it be subject to the same level of contamination of a kosher leather from a kosher animal if it's serving, let's say, as a canopy over a dead body? And the Torah says when it's something that's leather, and we learn out that leather over a dead body would be subject to the process of purification. You have to purify that tent, that leather. You have to the ashes of the paraduma. You have to dip it in the mikvah. Would that apply only for kosher leather, or even if we not kosher leather canopy over? That's the discussion that the Gemara says. The Gemara now wants to say that we find when it comes to leprosy, where the Torah says if there's leprosy on leather, we find when one of these 8 teeming animals, like a mouse, a dead mouse, or a dead weasel, or a dead lizard, comes onto a leather, it contaminates the leather. In both cases, there's no difference between leather, whether it's kosher leather or not kosher leather. That's the common thing. The common denominator is, excuse the pun, common thread, we're talking about threads here, is that also threads and leather and different types of things, is that if you're leather, there's no difference whether you're kosher or not kosher. The laws of contamination apply. So Afani avi olamate, we're also going to learn out that the tent of a dead body, when it contaminates, she'ar tamebo, which we know that leather would be serves as a vehicle of contaminate that could be contaminated. Nasebo or behemoth or behemoth Torah, that we apply the law of contamination. Nasabo or behemoth tmeya, or behemoth Torah has the same law as kosher leather, and we also be subject to contamination. Okay, now we're on 28a4 on the right side. Amalei Rava me Barnish. Rava from the city of Barnish said to Ravashi, Aaron from Manhattan was on the air, right? So Rava from Barnish, that was the name of a town. He says to Ravashi, it's probably a nice town in Babylon, in Iraq. So he says to Ravashi, Ikla Mifrach, how could you learn from those 2 cases? We could ask, there's something different over there. There's a unique stringency that leprosy has, and there's the same stringency that leprosy has that shiratzim, the teeming animals, have, which we do not find by the dead body, and therefore maybe that's why those cases there's no difference between kosher leather and not kosher leather, because they have a certain stringency that's common to them, which doesn't apply to a dead body. They both have a contamination less than the size of an olive. One is the size of a lentil, one's the size of a bean, which we said that contains 9 lentils, but a olive is more than all that. So therefore, both of them, since their Torah was very strong, as Rabbi Feinstein would say, the Torah threw a book at them, so to speak, very strong. They could contaminate even less than the size of an olive. So maybe that's why when the Torah was so strict that they didn't have the rule of the olive rule, so to speak. You have to have an olive size of bread to have, about an ounce of bread to go ahead and say Birkat HaMazon, right? If you eat less than comes tonight, you have a Sudah, and you make hamotzi, and your wife takes, or someone's wife or yourself takes only a little nibble, and you don't have a size of an ounce, you would not say Birkat HaMazon. You can't just take a little bite. You have to take about a slice of bread, size of a slice of bread, 1 ounce, 28 something grams or something, whatever it is. There's a certain size for you. Now, every bracha any amount of food, any amount of liquid you drink, you have to say a bracha. There's no minimum amount in order for you to say a bracha on a food. But there is a minimum amount you have to eat or drink to say the after bracha. There's a difference, right, Aaron, between the bracha we say before we eat and the bracha that we say after we eat. Right, Simon? The bracha, you want to say ala michya, you had some cake. Did you have an ounce of cake? You want to say ala gefen, because you had wine, you have to say an after bracha. You said Havdalah Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night. Time to say, you said Havdalah. Now, if you drank 3 ounces, you have to say ala gefen. You have to say ala gefen. There's an after bracha. You have to drink 3 ounces. There's a certain amount, a minimum size they have to have in order to say the after bracha. But the bracha that we say before we eat is any amount of size, right? So we deal with sizes. When it comes to contamination from a sheretz, from this dead teeming animal, this dead mouse, this dead lizard, the Torah was very strong that even less than the olive size, less than an ounce of the lizard could contaminate. When it came to contamination of leprosy, if the size of the leprosy that you see is less than an ounce, it also would contaminate. Okay, one has the size of a lentil, one has the size of a bean that's 9 lentils. But the Torah is very strict, less than the olive size. But when it comes to a dead body, for that dead body to contaminate, how much of the dead body has to be there? An ounce, a gazayit of the dead body. There's a piece of a dead body that's less than an ounce will not contaminate. So the Torah was stricter both by the leprosy and both by the teeming animals. So maybe that's why the Torah said that the leather of both are, whether they're kosher leather or not kosher, there's no difference, because the Torah is more strict over there. But when it comes to the dead corpse, so the Torah is not as strict regarding how much you need for contamination. You need less. The Torah says you have to have a larger amount, the size of an olive, an ounce. So maybe the Torah also was not as strict regarding leather. Maybe it's only kosher leather. But how do you know even non-kosher leather would be subject to this contamination? Is that clear, Aaron? You're jumping into a very complex Gemara, Aaron. So the Gemara answers, that was a question. Came a time pochas megazayit, tom of mate, but a mate she ain't a tamei megazayit. Mate, you need to have a size of an olive. Hello, Amar Rava mebarnish. Now we're turning the page. Rava mebarnish says, Atya b'kavachom. Sounds like there's 2 Ravas. There's the regular Rava, and there's Rava from Barnish. Atya b'kavachom menotah shel izim. We learn that from a kavachom from the notzah shel izim. The hairs, the wool, when you cut the hair of the goat, and a garment that was woven from the thin hair of a goat. And what do we say? We have a kavachoma. She'ein metamei b'nigoim. When it comes to leprosy, if you have a garment made from notzah shel izim, if you have a garment that's made from goat's hair, it will not be subject to the laws of leprosy. If there's a spot in that garment,
Why does it say Notzah Shel? It doesn't have Notzah. Notzah is a feather.
Oh, Simon, it's a great question. So Rashi, Tosfos, they address Simon's question because they don't, the way they cut, they pluck it out. They don't shear it. They don't cut it in the way when you cut regular wool. This is very thin hair of the goat, and it seems that they pull it out like a feather. And therefore it sounds like they don't, it's not the usual cutting the way you cut when you cut maybe with a certain instrument. Here you're plucking it out. Therefore, of course, they're plucking out, therefore that's called notzah. It's the feather of the goat. It's not a feather. It's like Simon said, it's the hair, right? It's the hair of the goat. And you made a coat from it. and we say that if you made it, that notzah zim, if you made a garment from this hair of the goat's hair, it will not receive contamination of leprosy. If there is a spot in that hair, it will not receive contamination. Yet, mitame ba'olameit, yet if you have the curtain that's made out of goat's hair over a dead body, it would receive contamination. So or behema tameya, which we find shemitama b'negoyim, which we find that the leather of a not kosher animal would contaminate by leprosy. Se'eno din, certainly shemitama ba'olameit. We'll see more about this kavachoma on Monday. I want to wish everyone a beautiful regular time. Monday is regular time, but starting Tuesday, Sunday and Monday is Rosh Chodesh. Saturday night is Rosh Chodesh, but Tuesday we're going to move our class earlier because of Slichot.
6:30?
And it looks like our class will be moved to 6:15. A little early because we're speculating that Slichot is going to be moved to 6:45. That's what we are speculating. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Beautiful Shabbat. Take care, Ralph. Well, beautiful Shabbat, everybody.
That's it. You too, Shabbat Shalom.
You too. Thank you so much.